Okay, good. There is input capture. Looks like audio's intensely quiet. Is that better? Okay, great. You're here. I'm just managing all of my silly tabs in Windows. And we have Luminaria in the background. We have this, and we have this. Okay. That should be good. I hope the water drinking noises aren't too loud. Maybe I should mute for them, but whatever. Anyway, so we are on page... What is it? 54? Page 54. Okay, let's get that visible then. Great. We're on page 54 of... Oh, come on, LibreOffice, please. Okay, sure. Is that good enough? It's so annoying trying to get this to work with, like, the screen capture of all that. Okay, now this should be good. Alrighty. Yeah, okay, so Deathshead can give us the synopsis of what we've done so far. And I will wait a little bit, and then I'll start continuing on from where Chapter 5 is. In the meantime, how's everyone's day going? I managed to not get enough sleep over the weekend, pass out at like 7:15 last night, and not wake up, and not actually like properly get out of bed until like almost 7 this morning. 7:10 is when my train leaves, so that was fun. Yeah. Having a time. But it's fine, got my lesson done, so we're good. Alrighty. Yes, so it's mystical measurements, it's about that. And the Tech Bro Magician is currently proceeding with his dastardly plan to measure the woods. Alrighty. The trading post at the end of Thistledown, a collection of 3 stone and timber buildings along the main road, was bustling with the usual merchants and peddlers. Hezrilla moved among them, men selling from their wagons to the farmers of the valley or through the windows. Many wore charms and enchanted talismans, believing that those of Thistledown were not entirely of the human world. And likely they are not entirely wrong. Hezrilla thought, her mind turning to the meticulous genealogies kept in the temple of Thistledown proper. Many a farmer took a fae for his wife or her husband over the generations, and my own line, of course, is intimately interwoven with the fae. Today, though, Hezrilla put such matters from her mind as she sought out trader Molga, her go-to for exotic goods from beyond the valley. This time she found him with his wagon, bartering with a farmer for a small herd of pigs. Molga was not fat, but he was a large man with a full black beard and a large nose like a ship's rudder. A hat concealed his bald spot, while a cape draping from his shoulders subtly advertised his wares. Molga glanced up at Hezrilla, chuckling as he waved at her. He then hurriedly finished his business with the farmer, beckoning Hezrilla to approach as he began moving the pigs into the bed of his empty wagon. Oh wait, I should not. Good to see you, Hezrilla. How's my favorite witch in the realm? No, no, that's not good. That's too close to tech bro. Um, hmm. What's a good trader voice? Hmm. Hmm. Good to see you, Hezrilla. How's my favorite witch in the realm? She's getting by. Do you have what I asked for? A portrait of the late Queen Nesria? Mulga marched back to his main wagon and fished around in the bed, pulling out a cylinder made of wood. He popped off one end, pulling a rolled canvas up from inside, spreading it out for her to take a gander at. The image depicted the queen as a young woman, looking out of a palace window as the light dappled her pale face and blue gown. Is this to your liking? It's to my liking, Hezrilla replied, sliding it back into its container and taking it under her arm. I hope only that it's sufficient for that foolish gnome. Tell me what he makes of the thing, will ya? The lad who painted that is having a rough go of it at the moment and could use some clout to help the commissions come in. I will make sure that his work is appreciated in the Fae community of Thistledown. That'll warm his heart to be sure. Now, I have those other things you were after, though it was a headache and a half to lay my hands on them. You know I pay well, Hezrilla said, drawing out several pouches of special medicine. For now you do. What do you mean by that? The epoch is turning, witch, and your cure-alls may be surpassed by the elixirs of the alchemist mages. Already men spread their medicines across the lands to wild effect. Those men promise much, but their word is worth little and less. So you say, but there are many who welcome the changes which are upon us. And there are those who welcome a famine because the cost of food rises, or a flood which clears away housing from land one wishes to till. Many things are welcomed by those who do not look so deeply at the matter. Those are somewhat ridiculous claims, madam. Then perhaps the tale of a town which discovered gold in their soil would be a better warning. For the lands were filled with prospectors, the fields were destroyed, the prices all raised, and in the end there was little gold to be found, leaving those who had once called that place home to wander away in search of untainted pastures. I remember that town. 'Twas terribly sad what befell old Helberg. Yes, and now I must keep Thistledown from being spoken of in the same breath. You may wish to have a word with them, then, Madam Witch. Hezrilla turned to follow his finger. The bottom dropped from her stomach. For there, approaching the valley, was a wagon with Brethola at the reins, 4 more alchemist mages riding around him on horseback. One was foul enough. Aye, it seems that your woes are multiplying. Hezrilla barely paid any mind to him, hurrying over and waving down the wagon. Brethola gave her a sour look, reluctantly reining up before her. His fellows stopped around him, all 5 stinking of their strange and regimented magic. For a long moment there was silence, the 2 opposing sides regarding one another. Then Brethola spoke. And here she is, the woods witch who sicked her monsters on me. I did no such thing. And yet, the attack happened mere moments after your arrival. And you are known to harbor resentments of the college? And you are not entirely human in lineage. Remvers Sata Mulligan. Only the words of Brethola are needed to form a sour opinion of the woman. I was only backing up our college, Connor. You must have known that. What I know is that we are here for an investigation. We shall not stoop so low as the bumbling magicians who came before us and throw out every accusation under the sun on mere suspicion. Yes, We are learned men of number and measurements, not superstitious fools playing with magic we scarcely understand. I'm not sure who's supposed to be saying this, because Molga is the traitor from the previous thing. Whatever. Probably Mulligan, which would be... We are learned men of number and measurements, not superstitious fools playing with magic we scarcely understand. But that is why you don't understand, Hezrilla said, though she knew her words would fall upon deaf ears. Measuring magic is against the very notion of the practice. Stuff and nonsense. Do you not yourself make potions? Do you guess at the ingredients every time? I consult with the moon and stars. I listen to the forest and feel the ebb and flow of power therein. I look over ancient guidelines and observations to give me an impression of what is safe and what might prove treacherous. There, you heard it from her own lips. She writes her recipes the same as we do. It is not like you at all. Bah, she thinks herself better than us. Move aside, woman, your time has come and gone. We are the future, and we will measure every inch of that forest, every tree, every rock, every blade of grass. Then you condemn us to destruction. Please, I beg of you. The time for begging is over. Now move aside. Helpless, Hezrilla stepped out of their way, the party thundering past her like the heralds of doom, marching into her valley. With a shuddering sigh, she wandered back to her horse and mounted up, the painting tucked into her saddlebag, as she made her way back to Thistledown, silently seeking the aid of the spirits to protect them from the darkness in their midst. A cold wind blew over the valley of Thistledown as the 5 alchemist mages pitched camp at the fringes of the forest. The trees grew deadly quiet as the Fae waited for the upheaval to come, the evening more dark and still than any the valley had known for centuries. All the while, Bernok watched anxiously with his fiancée from the bushes as they waited for Hezrilla to arrive and instruct them on what needed to be done. I'm sure Mother is cooking up something. She wouldn't have been so long delayed without good cause. Perhaps, but what if she is grasping at straws? Or has thought of nothing and cannot bear the thought of facing us, the whole forest, empty-handed? Mother would never shy away like that, you know that. You are right, my love. Forgive me. There's nothing to forgive. Bernok shook his head, feeling as though a yawning gap were opening up in front of him. We're all waiting to see what happens. But why? We planned to bring them to a meeting with Father and the rest of the council. Must we wait for your mother to tell us that? She might have thought of something else which might be done. But then again, the longer we wait, the likelier they are to take their measurements, and she may be waiting for us to act. Then let us go. Please, I cannot take this waiting any longer. I will be the Witch of the Woods one day, Bernok said, taking his first step through the shrubs and then the next. Come, let us face these rapscallions. Eladriel made a noise of approval, taking his arm as the two marched through the soft shifting grass, the light twilight of day fading as the sun dipped below the hills. The alchemist mages watched their approach, Berthala pointing them out and speaking in a hushed tone to his fellows. 4 others gathered with him, each one watching them with curiosity. It was the mustachioed one, Remvers, who spoke to them, holding up his hand as he uttered, "That's close enough, witch. We'll not be lowering our magical defenses for you." I wouldn't ask you to, Bernok said, looking at each one in turn before saying, "On behalf of the Fae, I extend to you an offer to enter the woods and meet with those you would harm with your measurements." Measurements are not harmful. It is indeed a cornerstone of all human thought. And magic relies upon forces and beings which are beyond human thought. Poppycock, all which is under the sun may be measured. Please, I beg of you, come and meet with the Fey leaders. See what your measurements hath wrought. Bah, we'll not be falling into your trap. And fortunately for us, we have the full backing of Parliament and the college to complete the survey. Berthala said, a smug smirk on his lips. Face facts, you've lost. We begin at dawn and will be finished by tomorrow evening. Then this was the last twilight of my people here. Eladriel croaked, shaking on her feet. The magic will be gone by this time tomorrow. Quit being so dramatic, girl. Magic is a force of energy which can be measured and plotted and quantified. How can men be so well-read and know so little? Bernok asked. He felt a tremor then, power flowing into Eladriel. While the alchemist mages flapped their gums, he looked at her, whispering, "Please, love, don't do anything hasty." "There is no haste," came a wheezing, deep voice, her eyes becoming pure blue spheres as she silently snarled at their foes, her canines growing in size. "I am a guardian, and there before me is a threat. I must..." And there was a caw. Halcyon soaring out of the forest and lighting directly on Eladriel's shoulder. She froze, her change reversing as she looked upon the bird. Berthala spoke then, pointing as he asked, "What's that all about?" "My herald, in this case," came the voice of Hezrela. Out of the woods, the witch emerged, looking worse for wear. Beside her stood the bedraggled and hunched-over form of Kritior. "Come with good news." "Oh, what is this now?" Kritior was the Canadian, right? "This is a parliamentary injunction," Kritior said, taking a faltering step and then another, growing steadier with each one as he brandished a piece of paper at them. "Preposterous! Parliament is on our side." Oh, yeah, you'd bet that. Parliament went along with you before I challenged your supporters," Kritior replied, at last reaching Berthala and slapping the paper into his hands. "And I defeated them." "How is that possible?" "It was the testimony of Kelnora and Gestor which pushed the body to act, along with your own college head's evasive answers." "That's nonsense. They're both accomplished alchemist mages. Why would they speak against the college?" They reluctantly joined you when you destroyed their old sources of power. But when they learned of Hezrela's plight, both were eager to aid her." "We will need to discuss their continuing status at the institution." "Well, be that as it may, the measurement of Thistledown Forest is postponed indefinitely pending an official parliamentary investigation." "You've done it," Eladriel said, her face lighting up. "You've stopped this crime in its tracks." "How do we know this isn't all some elaborate trick?" Remvers asked, narrowing his eyes. "It seems convenient that Kritior should arrive at this time with news of such an improbable move by Parliament." "I can assure you that it was no way convenient connecting the forest here with this scrap of untainted lands near the capital. And if you should like to test the veracity of this writ by continuing as you have been, I assure you, all of you will regret your lack of discretion. You may have friends in the body, but so do I, and Parliament takes a dim view of those who violate our laws." "Oh, but this is not fair at all. I put a great deal on the line to be the one who brings Thistledown into our understanding." "It is frustrating," Connor agreed, taking the writ from him and looking it over. Then he nodded, sliding it under his shirt. "And I am certain we will be able to have this reversed in time. But until then, our hands are tied." "And if we claim that we never received this warning?" "Don't be daft. There would be hell to pay, and you know it." Yes, no use crying over lost opportunities. We should sleep tonight and then return in the morning to argue our case. Treat this as a learning opportunity. Yes, never allow witches into our ranks. They are treacherous, all of them. But for now, we can do nothing. Berthala sighed, looking forlornly upon the forest. To come so close and be so far, it is dispiriting. Wait, there may be more that you can do, Bernok said, sensing an opportunity. You may still enter the forest and meet with the Fae therein. What would be the point of that? Except for falling into their trap. I would be with you. Any harm done would weaken Hezrilla's case. And you may learn a valuable lesson or two, perhaps enough to leave us all alone. My family is expecting you, and would consider it a kindness if you came. Is there even the faintest possibility of them waiving the injunction and allowing us to measure the forest? If not, then there is little point in entering. Are you really so rude that you would stand up such an appointment? We never agreed to such a thing, and I prefer not to have my limited time in this world wasted. Hang on now, Connor said, looking at his colleague. Is there really anything to be lost by trying to speak with these creatures? They'll never agree to our purpose for coming here. They hate numbers and humans and such things. Oh, come now. Aren't you the least bit curious? We have come all the way to observe. Is it right that we ignore a chance to do so? We may be able to come to some form of accord and understanding. I have worked with all manner of men in Parliament, some who I thought of lonesome, and some who thought the same myself. But we all managed to bridge that which lay between us and reach an agreement for the good of all. I suppose there's little harm. For if we are attacked, the college will have a field day with this place. I would just as soon become a martyr. Just as soon not become a martyr. Sauta said, folded his hands behind his back. If that's all the same to everyone else. Go on, be a coward then. Oh, fine, I'll come along. Just let me send a message back to the college so that there's no chance of us vanishing without cause. With that, the 5 alchemist mages formed up and followed them into the Fey Woods, an odd feeling coming over Bernok. For a part of him was certain they were making a mistake, yet he could not bring himself to rain on Eladriel's joy. His fiancée seemed quite enthused at this, hoping to show the mages what they had done to the forest and introduce them to the creatures of her family which might be harmed. I can only hope she's right, Bernok thought as they stepped through the tree line. Else she may fill her role as guardian of the forest, which will not end well for any of us. Okay, chapter over. Templar. It's only like 15 pages. Wow. Or pages left. Okay. And I really do appreciate how when you named the tech bros, you gave them all like very specific features. It made it very easy to like construct a voice for all of them. Okay. The formerly quiet forest was now abuzz with noise. The transformation was so great and total that it left Hezrilla surprised. For it seemed that every Fey creature who called the place home, and more than a few from lands beyond, had come to see the alchemist mages in the flesh and in their domain. For their part, the 5 interlopers seemed bemused by the oddities all around. Sauta had a hostile edge to his mood, kicking at any fairy and summoning measured magic to his fingertips to unnerve those creatures sensitive to his powers. Connor seemed more amenable, reacting with fascinated curiosity when he came upon a satyr or a bird-headed wolf or the flowering plant with singing leaves. The other 3 fell between these two, with Berthala sullen, Renvers cautious, and Molokin waving away any creature who drew too near to himself. Hezrilla hoped that this was a good sign, and with Halcyon's help, she guided them to the first area which had been crushed together due to their measurements. She pointed out the way the land had been pushed together like a cloth or wet clay, telling them, "You see, this is the result of your measurements. The Fey lands are meant to exist as a place between places. If you were to measure the whole forest, the magic would be lost." That's nonsense. If that were true, then all of the Fey wilderness should have long ago been squeezed of magic. It is improbable in the extreme that no one has surveyed the lands here before. How else would they demarcate the edge of farms? We know where one family's fields end and another's begins. We settle any dispute by common sense. There are many truths which defy so-called common sense, Malakin said, looking down into the crack in the soil, 1 inch wide and a dozen or more feet deep. Water is made from 2 substances which can be broken apart and burned. Please, look at what you have wrought and understand, I beg of you. Hezrilla ran her fingers over the soil, pointing out the dying trees orphaned on the rise. The lands here are drained of Fey magic, and we have no way of knowing that this was our doing. Enough of this, Kreator said, crossing his arms. There will be a full parliamentary investigation of this. Until then, I am here to act as witness of your meeting with the fairies. Then we should move on, Connor said, motioning them to move forward. Though I would like to witness this closing of the land by measurement. If true, it could open up new avenues of practical magic usage and ways of incorporating the Fae into the wider world. Yes! The ability to fold lands together like this, perhaps exposing valuable resources or closing troublesome gaps, would be invaluable. You've missed the point entirely. Hezrilla thought sadly, exchanging a glance with her son and Eladriel. But that is to be expected. And so they moved on from the scar on the forest, making their way down a long, winding trail. Sauta began complaining that it was far longer than the forest ought to allow, and the twilight before night had lasted for at least an hour longer than was possible. The others all told him to be quiet, which brought a thin smile to Hezrilla's lips, though she could not muster much mirth even at that. It was at the end of the Old Hound Trail that they arrived at last upon the great meeting place of the Fae. Here a circular clearing, perhaps 100 feet across, stood forever in the pre-dawn and dusk twilight. A great blue fire burned without heat in the center of the clearing, casting a ghostly light upon the greater and lesser Fae of Thistledown, all of whom had come for this occasion. There was Eladriel's family, her pot-bellied giant of a father, Dorlord, whose brown skin and iron-gray hair made him resemble a boulder more than a living being. There was her mother, the deer crane Othenra, with short antlers and shorter, honey-colored fur all over her body. She stood with Eladriel's dryad sister, the willowy Alen, whose flowering hair seemed wilted from stress. There were the bird triplets on a branch above, the owl woman Tisana, the raven Mogr, and the sharp sparrow Hulek. There was a frog woman and a serpentine Naga and a man made from clay like a living doll. Then there were the more bestial Fae, like a turtle with the face of a cat and the claws of a badger, a pair of eyes glowing from a swirling gray column, vaguely in the shape of a man. The arms and legs and middle marked by anklets, bracelets, and a belt, all wrapped around the mist which made his form. More abstract Fae existed as well in the shadows, from eyes without bodies and mere suggestions of form. And all of them were deadly silent, looking upon the newcomers with weary glares. For their part, the alchemist mages seemed ill at ease as well, more than one opening a spell book or shifting on his feet like a deer ready to bolt. Eladriel strode into the middle of the clearing, looking first to her father and then the others, as she said, "Hear me, my kin. Our once foes have been humbled and bound by their own higher power. They now come to us seeking understanding, and I would have us try to reach that before this night is out. You speak of understanding, but I sense nothing of the sort from these 5. You seem quick to prejudge, Great Fae. So much for whimsy and wonder, since you act like any other man. We do not prejudge, came the voice of Morley, the tree woman striding into the clearing. She looked Bearnox square in the eyes, an irritated frown on her lips. I fought Berthala earlier, and I might have bested him then and there had I not been told off, giving me more than enough to judge you in full. We had good reason for calling off your murder. Had you done so, Kreator could not have intervened as he did and blocked the college from acting. Such smooth words, Morley said, lifting her hand. Vines sprouted from the soil beneath Bearnox's feet, wrapping around his ankles and winding up his legs. Too smooth. I say that you've turned traitor. You go too far, Morley. You know well that my son's heart is bound to the forest just as mine is. This is slander. All here know that. Bearnox said, undeterred, crossing his arms and making no attempt to extricate himself. Take your accusations elsewhere. Quite right. There is no call for impugning the honor of one so devoted to Thistledown. I was only... We know what you were doing. Cawed Hulk. I can't caw, sadly. Yes? Hooted Tisana, fluffing her feathers. As we know what game the boy is playing. He and his wife will call for calm, while others will push away. Quirked. What are you 3 calling about? Eladriel asked, lifting her gaze to the trio. We have stopped the measuring of the forest, and now seek an understanding with those who would have brought us doom. But, my dear... Atlenra sighed. One of them has been secretly measuring our woods this whole time. What? Kreator said, taken aback. He turned to the 5 alchemist mages. Which one of you is responsible for this? There was a moment's stillness, expectant and dread, as all 5 men looked guilty in his own way. Sauta spoke first, muttering. I was counting my paces and the angles of the turns we took on the way here. I counted the trees on our path, calculating about where we might be based on their seasons. I kept my eyes focused on the sky, which slipped in through the boughs above, Connor said guiltily. I had to witness the changes in time, or lack thereof. I dropped stones on the ground every 20 paces, each with a tiny enchantment, so I might count them on the way out. None of these would be of any great danger in the ever-changing woods, Hezrilla said, frowning. Then Eladriel whimpered, clutching her middle. There was a tremor in the ground, all eyes turning to Berthala. The last of them spoke, whispering, I put down a spell of measurement into the ground behind me to calculate exactly how far the center of woods is to the outside. You fool! That's against the writ of Parliament. I will argue that it's not, Berthala replied, lifting his finger. When I said this part, I assumed that he was being more contrite than he really was. God dang it. Oh, that's annoying. Whatever. You get cursor, because I don't want to click away. I will argue that it's not, Berthala replied, lifting his finger, his digit glowing with the fell spell, and raised a notepad to jot down his findings. Now let me take this note. The air seemed to blur around Eladriel. One moment she was standing, clutching her stomach a few paces away. The next she was upon Berthala, gripping his wrists in her hands as her features contorted. The 2 were locked together, sweat beading on Berthala's forehead as he croaked, You invited us here, and you agreed to not take measurements. Eladriel growled, her voice harsh and inhuman as the wings rose on her back and buzzed in the air. I think you'll find that I never agreed to any such thing. I was commanded not to learn, an edict which I intend to fight. And then his finger touched the paper, a tremor rolling over the woods as his exact numbers began to fill the page. Eladriel made a guttural cry, the power of the Fae surging within her as she crushed the man's wrists, his notepad falling from his ruined hands, the measurements only partially taken. Yet it was enough to wound the forest of Thistledown. The fairies gathered, screaming, as the ground began to tremble like a table being shaken. Creature shouted something into the din, while the 4 other alchemist mages raced to their companion's aid. Yet they arrived too late, for Eladriel took her vengeance upon Berthala. He let out a pitiful cry as she tore his hands off and then plunged her own into his chest. He writhed and screamed as the full power of the angered forest entered his body. In moments, Berthala fell apart into a cloud of ash, leaving behind nothing but a pile of blackened bones. The 4 survivors summoned their powers and attacked Eladriel, Bearnock shouting in distress. Yet the guardian of the forest growled at them as she lifted into the air, her dress flaking away from her body, to reveal a creature with black skin covered in stars like the night sky, fairy wings fluttering like a haze behind her back, burning blue eyes in her face like cold moons, and horns growing around her head like a monstrous crown. There was a crashing of trees and sound of the ground rending apart as the forest broke under the alchemist's foul magic. It was Halcyon who saved them from a grimmer fate, the falcon picking up the notebook in his talons and flying it to Hezrelah. The witch burned the papers without looking at them, the exact knowledge lost into the ether, breaking the foul spell in an instant. A shiver of calm came over the forest, prompting Bearnock to leap into the air and fold his measurements around Eladriel, whispering, "Enough, the measurements are gone, love. These men must leave." Eladriel spoke, her voice resonant, seeming to rise from the ground and the trunk of every tree and the throat of every fae and the air itself overhead. She lifted her hand and spoke the word of banishment. With a rush, Sauta, Conair, Malakin, and Remvers all vanished into smoke. A moment came and went, the world seeming to release an inhaled breath. And then Creature spoke, the representative grabbing his hair as he said, "Mother Goddess, did you kill them?" "They have been banished forevermore from this valley," Eladriel said, descending from the sky and landing lightly on her hoofed feet. The stars faded from her skin as her horns shrank away, her complexion shifting back to her usual pale white. She let out a long sigh, her lips curling into a smile. "I hope that does not overly inconvenience you, my good representative. You did well in forestalling their destruction of my home." "The death of Berthala will be troublesome, but with enough witnesses to his violation of the writ, I should be able to keep the college from making hay of this." Creature turned to Hezrelah then, looking apologetic. "I am sorry to say that this will mean you must come to the capital to testify." That's not Canadian. "I'm sorry to say this will mean that you must come to the capital to testify." "Mother can't leave the valley," Bearnock said quickly. "That is not quite true," Hezrelah said, holding out her hand and letting Halcyon land on her palm. She turned to him, nodding slowly as she said, "I am only bound to this valley so long as I am the witch." "But then," Bearnock swallowed, his eyes shining as he realized what she meant. Okay, this song is a bit much. Alt escape. Nope. Of course that wouldn't work. Alright. We should begin the transference ritual at once. Am I truly ready for this honor? More than ready, Eladriel said, planting a kiss on his lips. It is time that we were wed as well. It would not do for the forest guardian to call the Witch of Thistledown fiancé. And you need not fear, my powers will not fade entirely. I will be there to guide you and lend you my remaining strength should all else seem lost. Then we should begin at once, Bernok said, looking over the assembled Fae, before those alchemist mages make trouble for us. You think my daughter's power of banishment is insufficient? Father, please. We have seen truly that those men can bring more trouble for us beyond their mere presence. There are many more in that college, and they are likely to treat the death of Berthala as a call to arms. Then perhaps we should work our magic and turn that to our advantage, Morley said, stepping up to the pile of bones and ash. She lifted up his skull, turning it in her hands. I sense his soul nearby, as I expected I would. It is not so easy for mortals to leave our forest even in death, should we desire the trespassers to remain. Then we should work quickly towards all of this. A wedding, a transference, and a resurrection. Everything for my little girl. Come, let us begin at once, for the valley will long remember this night. This valley and beyond, Hezrilla said, taking her son's hand as she released Halcyon for the last time, her hawk settling on the shoulder of the new witch of Thistledown Valley. Okay, I'll just keep going. Actually, no, I'll drink some water, because my voice is kind of dying. Okay. Dawn twilight filled the skies over Thistledown Forest, the insects buzzing and frogs croaking as a misty fog settled down between the tree boughs. Beside a small pond filled with lily pads sat a veiled four-poster bed, completely out in the open as was the custom. Bernok lay upon the sheets beside his wife, holding her hand as he felt the thrum of the valley's power flowing through him. As the music of the forest rose around them, Eladriel stirred. She rolled over atop him, kissing him on the lips as she took his other hand, whispering, "Our traditional week is at an end today. We ought to return to the valley." "Wouldn't it be right to end things at midnight tonight?" Bernok asked, releasing her hands and tracing his fingers down her back, making circles where her wings attached. "Oh, you," Eladriel sighed, fluffing his hair. The two lingered together a short while longer. Yet Halcyon soon arrived, flying in through the veils and landing on the pillow beside Bernok's head. He patted the hawk's head, chuckling, as he said, "All right, I get the picture." The two dressed, Eladriel in her gossamer gown, Bernok in his witch's robes, taking up the staff of his physician in one hand. He took his wife's hand in the other, feeling himself growing stronger as the two walked from the clearing for the last time. For when he looked back after 10 paces, the bed was gone and the lily pond had changed shape entirely. "I am the Witch of Thistledown." "And I am the Forest Guardian," Eladriel said, squeezing his hand. "That leaves me a monkey's double uncle," came Selvic's chorus voice. The two-headed dragon man loomed into view then, holding out a small box for Eladriel. "Though I've had years to grow used to that." "Please, Uncle, be kind." "I intend to be." He produced a small polished box, holding it out in both hands. "For you, my dear one. May it serve you as it served Witch's grandfather. Father." Eladriel took the gift from him, her fingers trembling as he opened the lid. There inside, she found a glass bottle filled with clear liquid. "What is it?" "Moonshine, distilled from asperweed." "Oh, thanks, Uncle. Eladriel groaned, snapping the lid shut and placing the whole box under her dress where it vanished from view. "Oh, sorry." Yeah. Don't worry about it. I will just come back here. That's where we're starting. Yep, that's cool. I can, Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll just hang out. We'll just listen to Luminaria music. Actually, I have to use the bathroom anyway, so that works out.